The light breeze gently swayed on the blonde strands in front of his eyes. The sound of the sea was calm, and this caused him to be swallowed up by his own thoughts. Leon kept his head down. He was sitting on a small rock, 3 vials held in his hands. His eyes seemed unfocused and remained motionless, almost as if it were fast asleep. Now that he had no longer to worry about the others sneaking behind his back to kill him, he let the information fall upon him. When he decided to become a police officer, he always knew at some point if he had to, he would have to use his gun. He would have to kill someone, and he was prepared for that. However, killing someone to protect himself or others in the name of justice was one thing, justifiable. The thought of killing had always been a part of his life. Even though he didn't like it, he could see himself doing something like that, especially in a city as violent as Raccoon. He was used to seeing people killed. He grew up witnessing gang conflicts, and most of them were fatal. Now killing someone like that on an island was just different. He felt bad. He felt guilty. He no longer just wanted because he killed, although he felt as if the weight of those he had lost had been put on his back. He felt bad because he had no choice. He was forced to kill those people or leave them to die. This didn't make him feel like he was fighting for the right, because rather he was trained for someone to be someone's private assassin. Sighing at his thoughts, he ran his hand through his hair, and a moment later, a loud noise made itself present behind him. Leon watched blankly with the slightest bit of curiosity as the ground began to open up. The earth began to move, and soon, a large metal gates became visible. The ex-cop stood as the gates opened slowly, and a platform with at least 5 guards were erected. In the center was William, with his hands behind his back, and dark glasses. All the guards were armed with military rifles and laser sights, and helmets that were completely covered their faces. Leon didn't approach. He didn't trust them enough to stay at least a bit relaxed. William approached with a surely pace, still with an expressionless face. As soon as he got close enough, the guards surrounded Leon, who tried to remain unimpressive as possible on the outside, even though his heart was pounding in the nervousness on the inside. William bowed his head slightly, seeming to analyze the 3 vials in Leon's hands for some time. "You have potential, Mr. Kennedy. I won't say I'm surprised, but I could be a little bit more pleased this time. At least someone made it in time," William said, extending his hand towards Leon, who after a few moments of staring at him, handed over the 3 vials. "But you know that your training will be something you've never been through in your life, and if you're not strong enough, you're going to die. I bet Sweet Claire and little Sherry won't like that, right?" Leon clicked his tongue, trying hard to control his anger and not say something that would result in some punishment. He was already on edge with everything that happened just before. William seemed to understand the reaction and almost found it amusing. "Asshole." "May I at least check on them, sir? Did you contact her brother like I asked?" Leon asked, his expression betraying his quiet words. Now, Mr. Kennedy, how can I do that when I haven't even started your training? That was our deal, right? You will do as I say. No questions asked. Let my men take care of those 2. They'll be home soon," William said neutrally. If Leon was any crazier, he would say that William was only trying to test in him like that, almost as if he wanted Leon to react in some way. Well, the blonde would say that was his succeeding. "You mean they're still on the streets?" The question came out of anger than he wanted to. He had lost some of control in a few months, but he couldn't stop it. The 2 of them had suffered too much already. And I'm thinking that they could still be on the streets of some strange city. All the possibilities of something bad happening. Well, he didn't have time to think about it too much, because the next thing he felt was so strong blow to his face, sending him straight to the ground. Leon grunted and spat out some saliva, catching a glimpse of one of the guards walking a few steps away and returning to his original position. In front of him, William crouched, and the blonde raised his head. His blue eyes were 2 frozen sapphires, stared deep into the dark sunglasses of the man in front of him. If he hadn't been too busy trying to look behind those glasses, he wouldn't have seen how his expression really was. Mr. Kennedy, if memory serves me right. I said that this attitude should disappear. Otherwise, you would suffer with the proper punishments. Is that not correct? William asked, and panting, Leon lowered his head, averting his eyes. He took a deep breath, controlling the frustration and anger growing in his chest. He had to act well as instructed. It was the only thing he could do, for the sake of them both. Yes, sir, he replied low, while still keeping his gaze on the ground. Try saying that again, only while looking at my face, William said in the neutral voice, and Leon bit his own tongue. Son of a bitch. He raised his head again and maintained eye contact, even though William was still wearing his glasses. Yes, sir, he said a little louder, with more intonation, and William seemed satisfied, although he stared at Leon for a little while longer. Good. I'm glad you understand now, Mr. Kennedy. I hope I won't have to remind you of that in the future. William fixed his glasses and turned around, walking towards the platform ahead. You can get up off the floor now, Mr. Kennedy. I believe you must be feeling rather uncomfortable. Leon stood up, taking several deep breaths to calm himself. This was humiliating. He stood up, with a bitter taste in his mouth, also walked towards the platform, hearing the footsteps of soldiers behind him shortly after. You have shown yourself to be clever, even at a disadvantage. You have a quick thinking and a good ability to adapt. And most of all, you have demonstrated that you have the basics we need, William said, with his back to Leon, as the platform descending underground and the gates above closed. Despite your hesitation and your stupid soft heart, you did what needed to be done. I just hope you don't make the same mistakes as you did. Leon sighed lightly, lowering his head. Permission to speak, sir. William turned his face towards him, minimally just to show that he had heard him, and conjugated that request. Conceded. With all due respect, I'm not a cold murderer. Those people never did anything to me, and The point is, Mr. Kennedy, William interrupted him abruptly, causing Leon to shut up. It is from now on that you must be a cold murderer. The people you will face in the future will not hesitate, no matter how friendly they may seem. This mercy of you humans is no use in real life. Part of your job is also focused on survival. So what am I supposed to act like an animal now? Leon asked somewhat incredulously. In a way, yes. Lions show no mercy to their enemies. They do not think about the lives of their prey. You must not think about the lives of your opponents. You must not have this mercy. None of the people you will face will have it with you. You may even think otherwise, Mr. Kennedy, but this is only best for you, William said, finishing his speech just before the platform reached its destination. But if you don't want to listen to what I say, I think it will be better for me. I won't have to spend money protecting those two girls if you die, William said, starting to walk. In response, Leon just shook his head before following him. He liked to think that William was only mentioning the two girls as a way to motivate him, but the point was that he wasn't dumb enough to really believe in that. You have 1 hour to clean yourself up and eat. After that, meet with Dr. Walter. He will begin with the medical wing B32 and explain the procedure, William said after stopping in front of the front door, and without giving a response, he walked away. 3 of the 5 guards had followed him, and the other 2 stood on the other side of the door. Leon watched William walk down the hall. There were several other doors throughout the place, but they were all open, with no guards to guard them. If those were the rooms, then Leon would have to say that the only one who had passed that test. Shaking his head, he entered the room, closed the door almost immediately, and as soon as he did, the lights went on by itself. The room was simple and neat. The walls appeared to be made of thick metal, and as did the floor. There was a single bed in the upper left corner, a wooden table with a chair next to it, and a lampshade on top of the table next to a vial of herbal mixture. How kind of them. In the upper right corner, a medium-sized closet with a single open door, showing some towels and clothes inside. In the lower right corner next to Leon is the entrance of a small bathroom. Although small closed without even a window and somewhat stuffy due to the thick metal walls, Leon would even say this place was comfortable. more comfortable than the forest of people who wanted to kill him, or a city of the most indestructible creatures at least. Leon sighed once more and walked towards the closet, already removing his blood and sweat-stained shirt, already in coordinates with his new reality. He took a towel and went towards the bathroom. As soon as he entered, to his right there was a basket, where he threw his dirty shirt. To the left was a sink with some utensils on top, and a mirror attached to the wall. Finishing undressing, Leon went over to under the shower and let the cold, clean water clean his body. The pain from his injuries hardly even bothered him anymore. He wasn't minding it enough to worry about it, as uncomfortable as it was. He would have taken the herbal mixture, but decided against it. As good as those herbs were, he wanted to feel some normalcy for a change. Nothing better than a cold bath, and one of the few things he could still enjoy from his past life. The young man watched the dirt being washed from his body along with blood being carried down the drain. It reminded him of the rain in Raccoon. He had shook his head, dismissing the thoughts. Remembering William's words, he sighed as he remembers he could no longer talk to his family. Leon Kennedy was dead to the outside world, and there was little hard to believe. And if his name was dead, what was he now? A nobody? What did the name really matter now? He was no longer a cop. He was no longer Leon Kennedy. He was simply being a ghost training to roam once again. Yes, a ghost. He would miss his name. After a while under the shower, hunger spoke stronger and decided to get out of there. After drying himself and wrapping the towel around his waist, he looked at the mirror. Jesus, he felt different. He had a scar on his lower lip, but he didn't even remember cutting it. After all, he had been through a lot. Not exactly by surprise. His left eye looked a little swollen. It was a little darker in color. The wound on his neck was still red, although it already had closed. His cheek was splotchy, and his forehead was bruised, and the tip of his nose was cut. Well, all things considered, he should be feeling lucky once he compared to his body. His face was almost intact. He turned around, walking with slow, steady steps towards the closet. The clothes were simple and black in all color. Of course, he had thought of wearing more military-style camouflage clothes. After dressing, he drank the herbal mixture. As soon as he did, he had heard 3 knocks on the door. Taking slow steps, he walked across the room and opens the door, looking curiously at the guard who had a tray of food in hand. Your food. Eat quickly and go see the Dr. Walter. William's orders, the guard said, and Leon took the tray, looking at it for a few moments, then the guard walking away. He then closes the door and locks it, walks over to the chair and sits down after placing the tray on the table. His eyes ran over in the food in front of him. Somehow he thought that he would eat there and just be tasteless military rations. However, he found himself pleasantly surprised that it was pre-cooked food with fruit and even coffee. After eating, he stood up and promptly left the room. He walked down the hallway, remembered the small map of facility that was nailed to the wall. The place was quite large, but it didn't exactly look like a laboratory, much less it did resemble the place that he had slept the night before. It was like a military camp, with him the only member in training. There were a few guards highly armed, but they didn't seem to be patrolling or protecting the rooms, as if each one of them were different locations to perform certain tasks. But what were they doing anyway? Was everyone in ancient fighting biological weapons? That didn't seem to be the case. After walking for some time, he finally reached a wing where the doctor would be, and as soon as he entered, he arched every single eyebrow. In curiosity, he had saw that door was the only one in that room. The blonde closed the door, seemingly surprised. The doctor turned around. "Ah, Mr. Kennedy, glad you're here. We need to run some more tests," he said, getting up from the chair that he was in and approaching another one further to the corner of the room. Leon said nothing and had just moved closer, and he didn't help but run his eyes around. That room was large with various equipment, and it was a bit curious that there was only one person there. "Something bothering you?" the doctor asked, pointing to Leon sitting in a slightly tilted chair, with what appeared to be a light fixture just above it. No, sir," Leon said, sitting back in the chair and looking up, surrounding the equipment began to move. What kind Some kind of fancy x-ray, perhaps? Leave the sir outside, please. I'm not a soldier, nor am I your superior, the doctor said, with a smile, pressing some buttons on the screen beside him, seeming to analyze something. The light above Leon went on, and he closed his eyes slightly. Right, what should I call you then? Leon asked. Just Walter, or Doc if you're shy, he replied, writing down a few things on a piece of paper beside him. Okay, where are your people? I mean, do you stay alone in this room? Leon asked, and Walter looked at him for a few moments. Most are in medical ward A32, and the same ward where you were in when you woke up before. The others are in C32 ward, analyzing your blood, he explained, moving the small light above Leon, and only did the blond man notice the small screen that glowed blue just before the light. Leon then looked at Walter again, and the doctor was quite different from William. He just wanted to seem having no trouble making the conversation. This was a great opportunity to satisfy some of his curiosity. There are a few guards around the halls. Who exactly goes on you guys' missions? He asked. All the guards up here can go on missions, depending on the state of the world outside, Walter replied, sitting back down on the chair farther away after turning off the light above Leon, who stood up and approached the door. So, they all went through some training as me? He asked, and Walter stopped writing in his book and stared at Leon in the eye. Not exactly. The physical training you will receive is similar, but heavier. You will not become a soldier like them, Leon. You're special. The missions they do in groups, you will be doing alone, Walter said, and Leon squirmed slightly, a little uncomfortable. Ah, what a great thing to know, he said softly, crossing his arms and sighing. Well, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but you already better keep that in mind. If it's any consolation, you're not the only one who'll be going out on missions alone. We have the others. William will explain to you later, if you ask, Walter said. Right, Leon said, amidst another sigh, shaking his head. I've wanted to ask you that for a while. Is there any risk of ingesting those herbs too often? He asked. Ingested crudely and unattended, yes. However, our technology is advanced. We have managed to manipulate these herbs to the point where you can ingest them without fear. Just be careful not to overdo it. Otherwise, you won't wake up for a few days, Walter explained before going back to writing something, and they were still silent for some time. Until at one point Walter sighed and dropped the pen on the floor, turning back to face Leon with a puzzled expression, making the agent in training somewhat curious. Look, take this as an advice, Walter began. I saw you in the forest. You're good. There's no denying that. But as brutal as it sounds, as wrong as it seems, that's the reality, son. There is no way we can defeat Umbrella cleanly. We have to break the rules, play the same game. If people have to die so that the rest of the world doesn't suffer for what Raccoon suffered, so be it, Walter said, looking deep into Leon's eyes, who, as much as he wanted to break eye contact, remained motionless. Deep down he already knew that. I'm not saying to become a cruel and brutal killer, or abandon your humanity. I'm just saying that, as bad as it sounds, knowing that there is a meaning to it all, there is a reason hesitating on the battlefield will result in your death. Walter finished before saying, and he was the one who broke eye contact first before standing up, leaving Leon stuck in his mind for a few moments, digesting those words. William may be cold, yes, but even to look at all he has managed to do, and it's not easy fighting Umbrella, your own corrupt government, terrorists, Leon, Walter said, putting some papers on a chart, looking at Leon, who ran a hand through his hair. Yes, I think you're right. Easier said than done, though. Thanks, Walter. Leon thanked him, and Walter gave him a small smile followed by a nod. Speaking of William, how did he get all this? I saw on the map on the wall, and this place looks like a small town in the underground, Leon asked, approaching Walter, who was still walking towards the door. Ah, a lie here, and a half-truth there. A deal here, deal there. William had to fight to get all this, but he was smart enough to get the enemies of his brother Albert, and with the little manipulation and lies, well, here we are, he said, opening the door to the medical ward. Well, Leon will be doing tests 2 weeks starting next week. There is nothing wrong with your body, or the fact that the virus cannot do act no matter how hard it tries," Walter said, closing the door behind him and putting both hands in the pockets of the lab coat. "William is waiting for you in North B Wing. Follow that corridor and you'll find the elevator that will take you there. Good luck in your training," he said, turning in the opposite direction from which Leon would follow. The blonde mare didn't answer, but he was satisfied that he found someone who was minimally normal that had talked to him without taking orders. Turning around, Leon followed the path that Walter had instructed him to take until he reached the elevator. There was a way that was very monotonous, and almost no guards in those corridors. After reaching the north wing, he is met by 2 guards standing in front of the elevator. At a glance, he could see William further ahead. The guard head to his right merely nodded, indicating for him to start walking. Leon did so, walking towards William, and at large but slow steps. The place he was in was wide and large garage. There were 2 military airplanes, both to left and right. In front of it was an airship strip, and in the distance he could see a blue of the ocean. "You are here a bit earlier than expected. Good. You have a lot to do today," William said, starting to walk and Leon followed behind. The blond man closed his eyes slightly as he exited out of the huge garage. He had admired the huge landing strip for a moment before turning left and following a small dirt road. They walked for a while until they finally came into an obstacle course. It was a wide runaway with another bumpy dirt path that went straight to the left, and in the background, still far away, Leon could see the island on which he had done the test. A few hundred meters ahead, on the left, Leon could see what looked like a gym because of the weights lying on the ground. This will be the training space for a while, and everything is quite simple. You just have to complete the training in the shortest estimated time. We need you to have a great physical fitness, William said, and as soon as he finished speaking, footsteps he had heard just behind Leon, making him tense up immediately. He had hated when someone approached him from behind, apparently. Turning around, he looked at the man who was approaching, and the man was wearing heavy military gear, different from the other gear of the other guards. He had a rifle on his back, 2 pistols on the holster on each of his legs, and the knife stealth attached to his chest, a ballistic vest with pockets of ammunition and grenades. On the back, a small pouch, just like the military clothes. Leon was intrigued. He had never seen that man here, and the curious thing that he was wearing the mask that covered his face completely and dark glasses. "Sir," he greeted William as soon as he approached, his voice slightly muffled by the mask. As soon as he turned his head towards Leon, "That's the rookie?" "Exactly, Mr. Kennedy. This is Hunk, just like you. He's one of our agents in front of the lines against biological weapons. One of the only ones who managed to complete the training, and most of all our spy," William explained, beginning to circle Leon at a small pace. The blond man turned slightly whined in surprise. "He will be responsible for your part of training. Dare I say the most difficult part? Let's just say he will mold the shape of the weapon you'll become. Hope you enjoy it a lot," William said, stopping walking and nodding to Hunk, leaving him in charge just before walking away. "You heard the man, rookie. You will follow everything as I say, do everything as I order, without complaining or asking questions. Understand? I don't want weakness. I can't stand to softness. If you survive, you will become one of the best." "Any questions?" Hunk asked, coming face to face with Leon for a few moments, who didn't even know exactly to react. "No, sir," he replied. "Good, then let's get started." He nodded as another soldier next to him, who turned and approached with the military backpack, along with the rifle and 2 pistols, handed it to Hunk. One of the pistols was a Desert Eagle. "Put these clothes on," he said, handing the backpack and guns to Leon, who blinked a few times, a little confused. There didn't seem to be any bathrooms around the area, wide open. Is there a problem?" Hunk asked, looking at Leon. The veteran standing still, motionless almost, and yet Leon couldn't help but feel imitated. He indeed, without realizing it, swallowed some saliva, tapped his index finger on the backpack nervousness, but still he didn't look away. "You have 90 seconds. Put your clothes on, Kennedy," Hunk said again, or rather ordered. His voice was calm, but the imposition caused something that Leon had never heard from anyone but his father. Without saying anything, Leon began to undress until he was wearing nothing but his underwear. That was humiliating, but what the hell can he do? Opening the backpack, he saw the clothes were similar to the ones Hunk was wearing, except the military pants were thinner, and the shirt was not long-sleeved and was just gray, with the boots were smaller. Leon put his pants on first, followed by his boots, shirt, and ballistic vest. And as soon as he did, he stowed his weapons in the same way as Hunk, as the rifle on his back, a camouflage pistol used by military, and the holster right up his thigh, and the Desert Eagle on his left. As soon as he had straightened up, he looked at Hunk, who had raised his arm, pulled back the sleeve of his tactic shirt, and checked his watch. And then he immediately turned back to face Leon. 124 seconds, Hunk said, falling into unpleasant silence after. Leon didn't even know what to do. As it turned out, he couldn't even do anything, because before anything else, he was hit with a punch to the face. The punch caught him completely off guard right in his face, and he fell backwards. Blood dripped onto the floor, pain spreading across his face, especially his nose. Jesus Christ, the punch was so fast, he could barely see, and his hand felt like a frickin' brick. He could see as if he focused a deformed nose. Fuck, his nose was broken. You think this is a joke, huh? Summer camp? Do you think a licker or a tyrant or some hunter is gonna wait for you to put your frickin' gear up? Get up, Sergeant! Hunk grunted, his voice doing the justice order given, and slightly dizzy, Leon stood up, staring at Hunk and trying to ignore the blood dripping down his face. Every second you spend on something unnecessary is one more person infected, one more liquor turning, and one more tyrant being created. More civilians and military are dying, more zones falling, and the world collapsing. Got it? Hunk asked. Yes, sir, Leon replied, annoyed but looked like he was breathing blood. I hope the same thing doesn't happen next time. Every day from now on until the end of the month, the training will change. Today we do something, tomorrow another thing, with the same function, but there is a white line marked on the floor. Go there. Yes, sir. He turned to said white line. Upon arriving, he felt his eyes running out of place once again, the sun hindering his vision a bit. There was a few pull-up bars, as well as the dip bars to go to left and right to the obstacle course. I want 60 push-ups, now. You have 2 minutes, go, Hunk ordered. And without the properly processing information, Leon was already doing push-ups. At first he thought that Hunk would act like every military instructor, shouting at him, handing out insults and purposely mean comments. But Hunk just stood there, arms crossed and head down, watching him. This was even worse than being insulted. For Hunk to intimidate Aurora, he had wielded authority. His arms began to ache. Sweat dripped from the tip of his broken nose. Doing 60 push-ups wasn't exactly the problem. The problem was 2 minutes. The problem was the extra weight, at least 10 kilograms, 2 pounds or more. Despite the difficulty, he had managed. Pull-ups, 1 minute. Leon immediately jumped on the bar and began to do exercise as best he could. His arms seemed to have burned from the lack of rest, from one exercise to the next, which made him even more tired faster. The extra weight seemed heavier, and that blazing sun did nothing to help but make him sweaty. Is that all you can manage? The training barely started and you're already getting slow? Hunk asked, and Leon gasped after doing another repetition. I can't, he said, doing one more. Do it faster, he finished saying before yelling at repetition, and Hunk just seemed to snort in deliration. Let me tell you something, Kennedy. When your brain says you can't do it, you're not even doing half of what you're capable of. Stop being soft. Come on, this is pathetic. Leon grunted as he did another repetition. Again, this time this was a problem. He took a deep breath and his heart beat fast, like drums on his chest. His pupils seemed to dilate a little as he felt the surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. And moments later, he was already on his last rep. Squat 70, 2 minutes. Squatting was the easiest of all, even with the extra weight. This is where we indifferentiate the weak from the strong. See that piece of log on the floor? Hunk asked, pointing to the fallen log just ahead, at the beginning of the bumpy dirt trail. Normally you would do this with other few men, but you are alone. This piece of log weighs about 40 kilos or 100 pounds. You will carry this log on your back and run against it 6 kilometers, 4 miles in total, Hunk said with his arms crossed, watching Leon's indifferent reaction intently. The blond man, panting, stared at that piece of log. He didn't know what to say, really. Come on, the clock is ticking, Hunk said, as Leon began begrudgingly bent down to lift the log. He grunted as he lifted the log with his hands and with some effort placed it on his shoulder. He felt as if he weighed twice as much before. Hunk, without saying anything else, Leon began to run with the log dirt on the track, hoping that the 6 kilometers would pass faster than his mind sounded, and most of all, he wouldn't have fainted halfway there. His heart seemed to beat faster, and the blood in his body began to rush through his veins. He felt warm, not just from the burning sun hitting his back, but he felt almost like he was on fire. 20 squats, Hunk said, and Leon gritted his teeth as he did what he was ordered. 20 squats, sweat dripped onto the floor, and his already wet clothes did little to cool him from the sun. He had kept running, hearing Hunk's footsteps just behind him, following him silently, just waiting for a mistake or a weakness. Put the log on your back, 10 push-ups, Hunk said, causing Leon to stop suddenly with a grunt from his weight. After awkwardly placing the rifle on the side of his body and the log on his back, he gasped one more as he did more push-ups. It felt like his muscles were gonna tear apart. So he went on for the rest of the way, and Hunk stopping him every kilometer for some different exercise. Although exhausted and in pain, the numb legs made Leon made it to the end of the trail, where he simply let the log fall onto his back and knelt down on one leg, grasping sweat dripping from his face and already soaking his clothes. Despite everything, he didn't exactly feel weak. He no longer felt like he was going to faint. Curious. I hope you didn't think it was over. Hunk's voice brought Leon back to reality, snapping him from that false hope that he would be the moment's rest. The blonde raised his head up with some effort, looking warily at Hunk, who was just behind a small inflatable motorboat. See that island? It's almost 5 kilometers from here to there. You will have to swim from here to there, Hunk said, pushing the boat into the water before climbing on board. Already on top of the boat, he looked at Leon, who was staring back at him with a tired face but expressive eyes. It's highly unlikely, but watch out for sharks. Let's go. Leon leaned on his kneeling leg and stood up, grunting from the effort of doing so. His legs and arms looked like they had been hit with acid. But he kept going without complaint. Without saying a single word, he walked to the water and began to swim, trying to ignore how comfortable it was to swim in the clothes, and even with all that equipment. Hunk followed behind Leon at his own speed, watching him intently. Of course, the blonde speed decreased over time due to fatigue, and yet Hunk had to admit that it was surprising that he showed no signs of fainting. No matter what he's doing before it ended up, the physical fitness workout was not like going to the gym, and it would only get worse and worse with each passing day. Time passed, 30 minutes, 45, 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, and Leon was crawling across the sand of the island. This time he let himself stay down, let the water cool him down to his waist. There was limit to everything. He had felt like he had reached his. Hunk got off the boat and walked up to the water up to his waist to the sand, and without taking his eyes off of Leon lying on the ground. Congratulations, Kennedy. You have earned the right to have your lunch, Hunk said, approaching Leon, who now saw he was close enough, raised his torso slightly off the ground, looking deep into the eyes covered by Hunk's glasses. Can I ask you something, sir? He asked, gasping almost every word. Go ahead, Hunk replied, crossing his eyes. Stop calling me by my name. Leon Kennedy is dead, he said, without averting his eyes much to the fatigue over his body. Hunk didn't want to answer him for some time. He stood quiet, still looking at him, until after a while he shook his head slightly and crouched down beside Leon. Good, Agent. William walked at least leisurely pace down the deserted corridor, save for the guards following behind him. He walked over to the door that led him to the small passage to the iron door that opened himself the moment he approached it. After entering, he runs his eyes quickly through the medical wing before focusing on what he was looking for. "Walter, looks like the research is starting to pay off," he said as he approached, catching the doctor's eye. "Sooner than I expected, I'll admit." "Yes, well, just the results were more or less expected. As we suspected, the virus has gone underground, a small mutation in his body," Walter said, turning to a screen that attached to the wall just behind him and pressing the button on the computer next to it. Soon an image of Leon's body appeared on screen, followed by a microscoped image of blood, along with a short video of something moving in his cell. "The T-virus has not yet given any sign that it can be activated and remains to be dormant. Perhaps with the right trigger some reaction will occur, but nothing will result in transformation and coincidentally death of Agent Kennedy. The G-virus, on the other hand, that's a little different." A graphic of a human body appeared in that graph. It shows the veins at the body of the blood that flowed with them. "See, the amount of G-virus that is still present in him is the most irrelevant. It doesn't have enough strength to attack Kennedy's strong body, but something happens when adrenaline surges through his body. The virus is marked in blue and begins to run along with the blood on the graph. Up until one point, the virus concentrated through the heart apart, in small parts in the muscle. I believe that when his adrenaline level goes up, he is unable to be affected by fatigue. For an example, excruciating pain, the virus forces and helps his heart back to keep beating. Those in the muscles lessen fatigue and keep them from abruptly in activities that would be harmful to other human." William put both his arms behind his back and looked at the graph in front of him. "I assume that strength and his speed has increased by almost 10%. But it's almost remarkable what occurs as the exponential increase in his reflexes." In front of the graph, the video when Leon was taking the test on that island earlier. The video showed the exact moment when Leon dodged the arrow at high speed while running towards his attacker. The ordinary man would not have this kind of reflection, even though an arrow was shot from a wooden bow, and the distance was short. His reaction time was nothing but unbelievable. "Can you tell me how much potential it increases?" William asked, moving his head slightly towards Walter. "Unfortunately not yet. We need more tests. Tests that consists of adrenaline being at its peak levels. Hunt can give us that data," Walter said, giving a small nod from William. "You have done well, Walter. Now what about what I asked you for?" William asked, and soon the doctor pressed a few buttons on the computer. A vial appeared in the mechanism in the corner of the room, and both William and Walter approached it. "It's not complete yet. The G-virus is extremely volatile, and it will make both Kennedy and Redfield and the Birkin girl so special. It's so hard to handle, but with a little time, it's possible," Walter said, now turning to William, who was still looking at the vial in front of him. "Regarding humans, what do you think?" "The same as for the animals, which in this case is painful and violent death. As little as the amount present in his blood, it would still be strong enough to kill a human. The only ones I think might leave the contrary effect would be Kennedy himself, or those two girls still being affected," Walter said, beginning to shake his head slightly. "But it's just too hypothetical to even know for sure. You can never really tell with these viruses, especially G. Well, we'll have Kennedy to test the hypothesis, administer smaller samples that apply the stimulation him every week." Walter's eyes widened slightly. But sir, we don't know the consequences with just one sample. Applying in it weekly could cause a drastic change in Kennedy's physical structure. We even have come that far without taking risks, Walter. If Kennedy suffers from this, it means he wasn't as special as we thought. We have to use everything we have against Umbrella, and that's what matters," William said, turning and walking out of there with quiet steps, before Walter could say anything. The doctor in turn watched him leave, but couldn't help but sigh in a certain regret. "Yes, sir,"